Rain hammered the streets of Manhattan so hard that headlights blurred into rivers of gold across the pavement while black umbrellas rushed past like frightened shadows. At the corner of Lexington Avenue, traffic froze beneath a flashing red light, and inside the back seat of a silver Rolls-Royce, billionaire Daniel Mercer loosened his tie with shaking hands after another 16-hour day pretending money could still fill the emptiness inside him. Then he saw her, a little girl standing alone beside a broken bus stop under the pouring rain. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her sneakers were soaked. Her thin hoodie clung to her tiny body. In her arms she held a cardboard sign already falling apart from water. "Need help for my mom." Daniel looked away at first. New York trained wealthy people to stop looking too closely at suffering. But something about her eyes stopped him cold. Not fear. Not desperation. Exhaustion. The kind children should never carry. Have you ever seen sadness so deep in someone young that it unsettled you for days afterward? "Keep driving," Daniel muttered automatically. But the car didn't move. The driver glanced through the mirror carefully. "Sir, she's barefoot." Daniel cursed quietly under his breath before opening the door. Cold rain instantly soaked his expensive coat as he stepped onto the flooded sidewalk. People nearby barely slowed down. Most avoided eye contact entirely. The little girl looked up cautiously when Daniel approached. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently. "My mom's sick." Her voice sounded hoarse from cold. Daniel noticed she held a small paper cup with only a few crumpled dollar bills inside. "What's your name?" "Emma." "And where's your mother?" The little girl pointed across the street toward an old apartment building squeezed between 2 liquor stores. Daniel hesitated. Every instinct warned him not to get involved. But another quieter voice inside him whispered something painful. Nobody came when his own mother begged for help years ago. What would you do if helping a stranger reopened wounds you spent years trying to bury? Inside the apartment building, the smell of mildew and cigarette smoke clung to narrow hallways. Emma led him upstairs while rainwater dripped from her sleeves onto cracked linoleum floors. Apartment 4B barely held together. A weak lamp flickered near the kitchen. Medicine bottles crowded the counter beside unpaid bills. On the couch lay a pale woman struggling to breathe beneath thin blankets. Emma rushed toward her instantly. "Mom." The woman forced her eyes open weakly before noticing Daniel standing nearby. Fear crossed her face immediately. "Emma," she whispered sharply. "Who is this?" He stopped because of the rain. The mother tried sitting up but started coughing violently instead. Daniel stepped forward carefully. "You need a hospital. We can't afford one." The sentence hit him harder than expected. Because despite his billions, despite magazine covers calling him one of America's most powerful businessmen, he suddenly remembered what helplessness sounded like. His mother used to say those exact words. Years ago, right before cancer took her. Emma quietly handed her mother a small sandwich wrapped in napkins. "I saved half for you." Daniel looked away briefly because something inside his chest suddenly hurt. Children should never learn sacrifice that early. The mother noticed his expensive watch and soaked cashmere coat instantly. "You don't belong here," she said quietly. Daniel almost laughed at the irony. Because truthfully, he didn't feel like he belonged anywhere anymore. Not in penthouses. Not at charity galas. Not in empty mansions filled with silence. "I used to think money fixed everything," he admitted softly. Emma looked up curiously. "Doesn't it?" The room fell quiet. Rain tapped gently against broken windows now. Daniel stared at the little girl carefully before answering. "No." His voice cracked slightly. "Sometimes it just makes loneliness quieter." For the first time all evening, Emma smiled faintly. And somehow that small smile affected him more than billion-dollar business deals ever had. An hour later, paramedics carefully carried Emma's mother downstairs after Daniel called a private doctor he trusted personally. Emma sat beside Daniel in the ambulance, gripping his hand tightly while city lights streaked across rain-covered windows. "You didn't have to help us," she whispered. Daniel looked toward her. "Yes," he said softly. "I think I did." At the hospital, doctors confirmed severe pneumonia complicated by untreated diabetes. Another few days without treatment could have killed her. Emma fell asleep in a waiting room chair near midnight with her head resting against Daniel's arm. He didn't move. Because for years, nobody had needed him for anything except money. Have you ever reached success so large that human connection started feeling more valuable than wealth itself? Around 2 a.m., Emma suddenly woke up confused. Did my mom die? Daniel's heart broke hearing the question come from someone so small. No, he answered immediately. She's fighting. Emma stared down at her shoes quietly. Then she asked the question that destroyed him completely. Mister, when people are poor, do they disappear easier? Daniel froze. The hospital sounds faded around him. Machines beeped softly in distant rooms. Nurses pushed carts through bright hallways. Rain still whispered against dark windows overlooking Manhattan. But all he could hear was that little girl's voice. Because deep down, he knew exactly why she asked. People walked past her all day. Past her mother. Past suffering. As if poor families slowly became invisible. Daniel covered his face briefly while tears finally escaped despite years of teaching himself not to cry publicly. Emma looked frightened instantly. Did I say something bad? No. His voice broke completely now. You said something true. For several seconds he couldn't speak at all. Then he slowly knelt in front of her. When I was your age, he whispered, my mother got sick too. He swallowed hard. And nobody stopped for us. Emma stared silently. So why did you stop for me? Daniel looked at the exhausted little girl sitting alone inside a cold hospital at 2 in the morning. And for the first time in years, the answer came honestly. Because I saw someone I should have helped a long time ago. Outside, the rain finally began to stop over New York City while dawn slowly pushed light into the sky. And sitting there beside a little girl the world almost ignored, billionaire Daniel Mercer realized something life-changing. The most dangerous poverty in the world is not lacking money. It is living in a society where people stop seeing each other as human. By sunrise, pale golden light spilled through the hospital windows while New York slowly woke beneath wet streets and steaming sidewalks. Daniel Mercer sat in the intensive care waiting area wearing the same rain-soaked clothes from the night before, staring silently at a paper coffee cup gone cold hours ago. Emma slept curled beside him beneath his expensive coat. Every few minutes she reached for him unconsciously in her sleep, as if afraid he might disappear too. And strangely, Daniel realized he was afraid of disappearing too. Not physically, emotionally. Have you ever spent so long building walls around your heart that one small act of kindness suddenly made you feel human again? A doctor finally approached around 7 in the morning. She's stable, the woman said gently. Your friend came very close to respiratory failure. Daniel nodded quietly with visible relief. Emma woke instantly. Mom. The doctor smiled softly. You can see her soon. The little girl burst into tears without warning and threw her arms around Daniel's neck. Real tears. The kind children release only after fear finally loosens its grip. Daniel held her carefully while emotion tightened painfully in his chest. Because no one had hugged him like that since his mother died 28 years earlier. Inside the hospital room, Emma climbed carefully beside her mother while machines hummed softly nearby. The woman looked exhausted but alive now. She turned weak eyes toward Daniel. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. Yes, she whispered. I do. Daniel stood near the window awkwardly. Gratitude always made him uncomfortable because most people thanked him for donations, not humanity. Finally she asked quietly, why would someone like you stop for strangers? Daniel looked down at the busy Manhattan streets far below. Thousands of people rushing somewhere. Ignoring someone. Missing someone. Because once, he said softly, I prayed someone would stop for my family too. Silence filled the room gently. Emma's mother wiped tears from her face before speaking again. My name's Laura. Daniel nodded. Daniel. Emma smiled weakly from the hospital bed. Now you're not strangers anymore. Children simplified truths adults complicated. Over the next week, Daniel returned every single day. At first he told himself it was practical. Helping arrange treatment. Fixing apartment repairs. Making sure Emma had food. But deep down, he knew the real reason. Their tiny broken family made him feel less alone. One evening after visiting hours ended, Daniel helped Emma with homework in the hospital cafeteria while she colored flowers beside her math book. You're bad at fractions, she informed him seriously. Daniel laughed quietly. I own 3 companies. Still bad at fractions. For the first time in years, his laughter sounded genuine instead of rehearsed. Then Emma suddenly asked, why don't you have kids? The question caught him off guard completely. I wanted them once. What happened? Daniel stared silently at the coffee machine across the room. She left when I started loving work more than people. Emma frowned thoughtfully. That sounds dumb. Daniel smiled painfully. Yeah, I think so too now. What would you do if a child accidentally exposed the emptiness you spent years hiding behind success? A few days later, Daniel visited Laura and Emma's apartment while construction workers repaired mold, plumbing, and broken heating systems he secretly paid for. Emma ran excitedly through the living room. Feel that, she shouted. Warm air. Laura watched Daniel quietly from the kitchen doorway. You're changing her life. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, his voice softened. She's changing mine. That night, after workers left, Emma carried out an old cardboard box filled with faded photographs. My grandma kept these before she died. Daniel froze when he saw the first picture. A younger version of his own mother stood smiling beside Laura's mother outside a Brooklyn diner from 30 years earlier. His hands started trembling. Where did you get this? Laura looked confused. My mother and her best friend worked there together years ago. Daniel stared at the photograph, unable to breathe properly. Because standing beside Laura's mother was the woman he lost at 14. The woman whose funeral nobody attended except him. Tears filled his eyes instantly. My mother knew yours. Laura slowly covered her mouth in shock. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Emma quietly asked, You mean, you were connected before? Daniel nodded silently, and suddenly life felt impossibly strange and heartbreakingly beautiful at the same time. Because out of 8 million people in New York City, grief had somehow carried him back toward a forgotten piece of his mother. That evening, Daniel sat alone inside his penthouse staring at city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass walls. But for the first time, the apartment didn't feel impressive. It felt empty, too quiet, too cold. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Mom smiled today for real. Thank you. Daniel read the message 3 separate times. Then slowly sat down as tears blurred the skyline outside. Because after decades chasing wealth powerful enough to protect himself from pain, one little girl had accidentally reminded him what actually gave life meaning. Not money, not status, connection. The next weekend, Daniel picked Emma and Laura up for lunch in Central Park. Autumn leaves drifted through sunlight while musicians played jazz near the fountain. Emma suddenly grabbed both adults' hands while walking between them. Neither pulled away. People keep staring at you, Emma whispered to Daniel. They recognize me sometimes. Emma shook her head seriously. No, they're staring because you look happy. Daniel stopped walking instantly. Happy. He couldn't remember the last time someone used that word about him. Laura smiled softly beside him. She's right. For a long moment, Daniel simply stood there beneath golden trees listening to Emma laugh while pigeons scattered across the sidewalk nearby. And deep inside, something frozen for years finally began thawing. Because sometimes life doesn't heal you through success. Sometimes it heals you through unexpected people standing in the rain, waiting for someone to finally stop and see them.